The roar of motorcycles echoed through the dusty alley, rattling the tin roofs and sending pigeons fluttering into the sky. A group of bikers leaned against their bikes, the late afternoon sun glinting off chrome and leather, laughing over some private joke when a small, terrified voice pierced the hum of engines. "Please, somebody help. They're hurting my mama." Heads snapped toward the sound. At first, the bikers exchanged skeptical glances. This was the kind of neighborhood where cries for help often faded into lies, but then they saw her. A little girl, no more than 7, her hair tangled and dirty, was running toward them, tears streaking her dusty cheeks. She clutched a frayed backpack, dragging it behind her like a lifeline. Her tiny fists shook as she shouted again, "They're beating my mama. Please." Time slowed. The bikers, who had spent the last hour teasing one another and sipping coffee, suddenly fell silent. There was a sharp tension in the air, a shift as old instincts, the kind that don't always come with reason, kicked in. One of the bikers, a tall man with a graying beard and tattoos snaking up his arms, stepped forward. "Hey, kid, slow down. Tell me what happened," he said, his voice a deep rumble, rough but not unkind. The girl hiccuped and sobbed, pointing down the alley where shadows stretched long and menacing. They're hurting my mama. Please, make them stop." Another biker, a woman with fiery red hair and a leather jacket adorned with pins, scanned the alley. "Where? Who's doing this?" she demanded, her hand unconsciously resting on the belt of her bike. "I don't know their names. They've been coming every day. Hitting her, taking our things." The girl's voice cracked, a blend of terror and exhaustion. "Please, they'll hurt her worse if I go back." The bikers looked at each other, a silent communication passing between them. This wasn't some petty fight over turf or territory. This was someone smaller, weaker, desperate. And instinctively, bikers, for all their rough exteriors, have a certain code about helping the vulnerable. "Stay here," the bearded man said, and without hesitation, the group revved their engines and tore down the alley, the girls' cries echoing behind them. The alley was narrow, littered with broken crates and the stale scent of spilled alcohol. 2 men loomed over a frail woman, barely standing, her clothes torn and face bruised. She flinched at every shove, trying to protect herself. When the bikers skidded to a halt, the sound of engines roaring like thunder, the attackers froze, clearly unprepared for this kind of confrontation. The red-haired biker stepped off her bike, boots clicking against the pavement. "Back off. Now," she said, voice sharp enough to slice through the tension. The men laughed nervously, underestimating the group before them. "What are you gonna do, leather freaks? Ride us into submission?" one sneered, trying to look confident, but his eyes darted to the others as if seeking reassurance. The bearded man's gaze was steady. "You want to try us?" His tone wasn't threatening, it was measured, calm, but there was an unspoken weight behind it, a promise that they were outmatched. For a moment, everything hung in balance. Then, unexpectedly, the attackers scattered, retreating down the alley like startled rats. The woman collapsed into her daughter's arms, shaking, crying, and mumbling apologies. The girl wrapped her arms around her mother, sobbing uncontrollably. The bikers approached cautiously. "Ma'am, are you okay? Can you walk?" the tall man asked gently. The woman nodded weakly, trying to stand. I think so. Thank you so much." One of the younger bikers, barely out of his 20s, crouched down to the girl's level. "Hey there, champ, you did good. You were brave coming to us." The little girl sniffled, wiping her tears on the sleeve of her shirt. "I was so scared. They always hurt us. I didn't know what to do." "You did the right thing," the red-haired biker said, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Sometimes the right thing is just asking for help." The woman finally found her voice. I don't even know how to thank you. These men, they've been taking our rent money, our food, everything." Her eyes glistened with a mixture of gratitude and despair. The bearded man exchanged a glance with his crew. "Look, We can't solve all your problems overnight, but we can make sure they don't come back tonight." He signaled, and the group formed a perimeter around the small street, their motorcycles casting long shadows in the late sun. They stayed alert, scanning the neighborhood, and their presence alone seemed to deter the usual troublemakers from emerging. As they waited, one of the bikers handed the mother a bottle of water, another offered a sandwich. The girl peeked at them suspiciously at first, as if unsure whether kindness could exist outside of books or television. But slowly, a smile broke through her tears. It was tentative, shy, but real. "You know," the red-haired biker said casually, "sometimes people think bikers are all trouble. But really, we just don't like seeing people getting hurt." The girl's eyes widened. "Really? Really," he said with a grin. "We've got our ways." The mother finally spoke, her voice hoarse. I don't know what we would have done without you." The bearded man shrugged, brushing dirt off his jacket. "Hey, anyone in our place would have done the same." Then came a sound that made all of them freeze, a slow, deliberate clap. From the shadows emerged an older woman, hunched slightly, her hands clasped in front of her. "You think that makes you heroes," she said, her voice dry but not unkind. The bikers tensed, unsure whether this was another threat. But the older woman smiled faintly. "No. You did what you had to do. That's all. But, sometimes that's more than enough." The little girl ran to her mother again, hugging her tightly. "Mama, they saved us. They really saved us." The mother's eyes filled with tears as she looked at the bikers. "You don't know what this means. You don't know how much hope you've given us." One of the bikers, a quiet man with a beanie pulled low over his eyes, knelt beside the girl. "Sometimes," he said softly, "hope comes from the strangest places. And sometimes, it comes from people you never expect." The group stayed long enough to ensure the attackers were gone and that mother and daughter had a safe place to rest for the night. They didn't wait for thanks or praise. They didn't linger for recognition. They simply mounted their bikes, the engines growling back to life, and disappeared down the street as quickly as they had arrived. As the dust settled, the girl looked after them, her small hands pressed to her mouth in awe. "Mama, they were angels," she whispered, her mother hugged her tightly. "Yes, angels in leather jackets." And though the sun dipped below the horizon and shadows lengthened, the memory of that moment, the roar of the engines, the fearless silhouettes, and the unexpected kindness, lingered. It was a night they would never forget, a night when strangers became protectors, when fear was met with courage, and when the world felt, if only for a moment, safe again. Hours later, when the girl finally fell asleep, the echoes of motorcycles in the distance still rang in her ears. She dreamed of chrome and leather, of laughter and rumbling engines, and of the strange, comforting truth, that even in the roughest corners of the world, there were people willing to stand up, to shield the helpless, and to remind the world that kindness sometimes comes on two wheels and a roar.